Hi, good evening, dream builders. This is Jeralis, and I'm here hosting for today. Today we have Rosyln Lash joining us. Oh, sorry about that. I hear myself twice. So, how does it sound now? Sounds better?
It does
Rosalind, you
not
hear me
hear
good?
echo now. Heard a
Do you
slight
guys?
echo before.
Yeah. Do you guys hear me? I see here on Rosalind, we have people from Orlando, Southern California, Chicago, Philly, Hillside, New Jersey. We're a lot of people here from different locations. The Boogie Down Bronx, hey. Love that. I'm in Philly too, so hi from Philly. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have Rosalind Lash here with us. And Rosalind is an accredited financial counselor and the author of The Seven Fruits of Budgeting. She specializes in financial education, adult coaching, and works virtually with adults, helping them to navigate through their personal finances. For example, budgeting, debt, and credit repair. Rosalind is a real estate broker and landlord. She's also the founder of Youth Smart Financial Education Services. Her advice has been featured in national publications such as USA Today, Time, Huffington Post, not NASDAQ, I guess right now, so yes, Los Angeles Times, and a host of other media outlets. So welcome, Rosalind. I'm so excited to speak to you today.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you. And hi,
Cause
dream builders. I'm a dream builder
yeah,
as well.
yes, I've definitely been in a situation having a loan upside down. And it's always been a fear, especially I just got a new car loan, so I'm looking forward to really learning and
I,
how to even know if you're in an upside down loan. That's the first thing. I didn't even know I was in an upside down loan.
yeah, it happens to many Americans,
So
unfortunately.
yeah, but take it away.
Okay, so look, I always have to have my handy dandy notes here. So if you see me looking down and not looking in the camera, that's why. Look, I'm old school, so I have a tendency to forget. But the first thing I want to do is just kind of briefly go over how to buy a car. And the reason that I like to do that is because if you're buying a car or buying a house, a large ticket item, you actually set the stage for your profit when you buy the house or the car. That's when you're setting the stage for your profits. Once you have bought it, and then you get ready to sell, I mean, that's wonderful, but it's too late. If you paid too much initially, then it's too late to recuperate. So I'm going to briefly go over how to buy a car, and then I'll address reasons for being underwater or being upside down, having negative equity in your car loan, and then I'll address what you can do about it. So first of all, of course, you want to get a budget because you need to know how much you can afford to spend for the car. You want to get pre-approved, and when you do your budget, base it on your net pay because we don't receive gross. So you definitely want to base it on that, and then consider your taxes and insurance and maintenance. You may want to go to your local bank or credit union. That's usually less than going to the dealership. And by all means, please don't go to a finance company. Uh, at the dealership, you want to never divulge. Many people go to the dealership and they'll say, "Oh, I can pay 300." No, you need to do your homework before you get there. You're negotiating on the price of the car. You're not negotiating on how much you can pay because if you can pay $1, they'll stretch it out. They'll stretch it out into eternity. So you're negotiating on the price of the car. And of course, you want to do your research. You can go to websites such as AutoTrader, Cars.com, Edmunds, KBB, and you want to buy a car that is going to last you a long time. You don't have to keep the car for 200,000 miles, but there are many cars that will last over 100,000 miles. You don't have to keep it that long, but that gives you indication that that car is going to hold its value. And so I did provide a link, and I'll give it to you. And if you would, if you type it in the comments, it's bit.ly, BITLY .com/ 200K cars. So that'll give you a list of cars that are expected to hold their value and that you can drive them a long time. Because part of the reason that people get upside down is because the car doesn't hold its value. And so if that's the case, you can buy a car and then as soon as you drive off the lot, you're going to lose a good percentage of the value of the car. So you want to get something that's known for holding its value. So even if your payments don't quite keep up with the depreciation rate, um, you will still be able to hold on to the car. What you really don't want is to be paying for a car that's not working. Have your car payments last longer. It looks like the computer froze, but I don't know if you can hear me. Can you still hear me? Wait, well, I guess you can't because I can't hear you. Or you can wave your hand if you can't hear me, and I'll just continue. Okay, that's fine. Um, so the worst thing is you paying for a car and you continuously pay and the car is just giving out, and you're just hoping that you can continue to make those payments and that the car will hold up through the payments. That's a bad situation, and it also indicates that you probably will have some negative equity there. Um, and then two things to consider when you're buying a car. If you're trading a car, your negotiation on the trade and your negotiation on the car that you're purchasing, they're totally separate. Don't intermingle those conversations. Don't talk about, well, if you give me 3,000 for that, then I can put. Those are separate. In fact, you don't even have to let them know that you're trading a car until you're at the very end of the negotiations. You can let them think you're paying for it. Actually, I did that once, and it worked out very well to my benefit. I was young then, and I just stumbled upon that. I had a car. I know I'm dating myself, but I had a Chevette way back when, and the car was only valued at, I don't know, I think it was valued at something like $700 to $800, and they told me that they would give me 400 for it. Well, even then, I realized that, oh, y'all making a killing, and I realized they need to make some money, but they were making a lot, and they told me that in conjunction with the car that I was buying. So make a long story short, when I came in, I had the cash, and their heads kind of dropped. Um, and then lastly, you want to get the car inspected. Now, so that's kind of just to rehash how to buy a car, because again, it's when you buy the car is when you are potentially putting yourself in jeopardy of being underwater. Now, the reasons for being underwater is because cars lose value instantly. When you drive, okay, I guess I can still see myself, so I continue. My screen blacked out, but that's okay. When you drive off of the lot, your car has depreciated. So you want to be sure that the amount that you pay is not more than retail. Sometimes they will actually list the car for over the retail amount. I bought a car. Well, now it's been probably about 10 years ago, and it was a used car. If this is you, then I know my phone. Oh, I'm just talking, so that means we're not on live. I see something that says share the permanent link, bookmark anytime. Let me see. Okay. I wonder where Where did they hear me at? Okay, hold on. I think I might be in. Wait a minute, let me see. It's the same one. You're about to join. Join. You already. Oh, I'm live now? Okay, so can you tell me the last thing that you heard so I don't do any repeating? Okay. So I hope I'm not repeating because we had the interruption. And I hope that you don't see that big block that's sitting in the middle of my screen either. um, but so I went over the reasons that you should um, be cautious and be equipped with all the resources that you need when you buy a car. And so now we're going to go over the reasons where you could be underwater. You can be underwater because as soon as you drive off the lot, especially on a new car, the car depreciates. So that's why many professionals and industry experts suggest that you get a car that is 2 years old, or 2 or 3 years old, because that way you're not paying for that depreciation. Now, statistically, cars lose up to 60% of their value within 5 years. So that's a good reason not to get a new car, because 60%, if it's 60% up to 5 years, then you can only imagine that. And I don't know, I don't think that it's 60 divided by 5. I think that the first 2 years you're losing like 20% each year, and then it gradually decreases. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to close this window because it's just not allowing me to. So, oh, bear with me. I'm sorry. Just one moment. I think I see what the problem is. Okay, wave your hand if you can see me. You can't see me. I can't hear you.
Go ahead, Rosalind. They can
hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, good. I think the problem is I was standing on two screens. But at any rate, so they depreciate so fast until you're going to lose some money, especially if you have not gotten a car that's going to retain its value. Also, if you drive a car more than 15,000 miles per year, it's going to lose its value, because automatically the car experts allot 15,000 per year. And one time it was 12,000, but it has increased. But if you're someone that travels a lot, you're going back and forth between a few cities. I know I did that once, and I racked up a whole lot of miles. Fortunately, I didn't trade the car; I sold it myself. But I would have lost money had I done that, because I was driving roughly 150 miles per day, and that adds up. So if it's more than 15,000 per year, you're going to be underwater. When you go to the lender, or you get ready to trade the car, they will look up the value, and that's based on the condition of the car and the amount of miles that you have on the car. And if your mileage is high, then of course you're going to lose some money. Last night I was looking at a car for a client, and it showed that the average car, and it was a 2015, was, I think, 54,000 miles, and this particular car had 12,000 miles, and that raised the price of the car between $4,000 and $5,000. So you can see that it's easy to get underwater if your car has a lot of miles, and the opposite is true. It's easy for you to have a lot of equity if the car is not being driven a whole lot. Look, if you're just driving between home and work. um, so the third concern is if you're rolling cars over. So you have already had a car that you were underwater, and for whatever reason you decided to take that car to the dealership. Well, when you do that, you take that car to the dealership, and then the negative equity that you have on that car. So, for example, if you owe $4,000 on that car, they just simply roll it into your new car payment. So, essentially, you'll be paying for two cars. You'll be making two car payments. So,
Mm.
that means you'll be continuously having negative equity because they just rolled it right in. So again, the car loses up to 60% in the first 5 years. If you drive the car more than 15,000 miles per year, if you have rolled a car in, a negative equity car in, or traded it in, then that's rolled into your new car payment. Um, if you finance for more than 60 months, now there are some really nice cars, and sometimes they may not be within your budget, and you think, well, that's okay. I'll just get a 72-month loan, a 7-year or 8-year loan. Well, it may be comfortable for you to make that payment, but when you get ready to trade the car in, you're going to have negative equity, and they're going to put that on top of the new car, because anytime that you're paying for a car for over 60 months, then the majority of your payment is going towards the interest. You're not paying the principal off, so it's automatically being a negative situation. If you have a high interest loan, now, a high interest loan is generally given to you if you have your credit, has blemishes on it. So ideally, you want to have, what's considered good credit, a score of 680 when you go to get the car. That way, you'll get favorable terms. You'll get a favorable interest rate.
And Rosalind, I have a question.
Yes.
Back to your previous point. So, what if you buy a used car and, well, what's considered low mileage? I guess that's a good question.
15 miles, 15,000 per year. So
Oh, okay.
if it's under 15,000 per year, so if you buying a car that's 3 years old and it has under 45,000 miles, then that's low mileage.
Okay, if it's less than 3 years old and it has under 45,000 miles, you said?
Yes,
That's
because
okay.
15,000 miles per year.
Okay, makes sense.
Yes, you're lying.
So it so I guess the question was, even if it's a used car with under 50,000 miles, you shouldn't try to extend your loan period longer than 60 months. Is that what you were saying? Because it will mostly go to interest?
It's going to mostly go to interest, whether it's used or new. That's not
Okay,
going
yeah.
to affect the payment. I mean, well, yeah, kind of. Look, you might end up paying more. The interest rate is usually a little higher on used cars. However, if your loan is extended beyond 60 months, you're going to pay more interest. So you'll be paying more on the car. And, ideally, it shouldn't be more than 3 years. But that's kind of difficult in this economy because, the prices are so high. So it's hard to get a car and pay for it in under 3 years. Unless, of course, you get a used car and it's more than 3 years, then that might make it a little easier. So it does depend on the car that you get. But when you are getting a very expensive car, a big money car, yes, if they're going to extend it, they'll extend it
Yeah.
for I don't know how long, but they'll extend it. Look, they'll
Yeah.
probably extend it for the next 10 years.
Yes, they will.
But you may end up paying for a car longer than the car will last, especially if it is a high ticket car. If it's a high price car, if it's an average, a moderate, affordable car, that's different. But if you get what I call the big money cars, even if they are 3, 4, 5 years old, they still cost a lot. So then
Yes.
you're 5 years old when you buy it, and then you tack on another 8 to 10 years, the car is old. So as soon as you finish paying for it, if you're able to pay for it, you have to get right back into another car. And then you'll have negative equity because you've been paying for it so long until most of that has gone towards the interest and not the principal. So
So my banker told me to get a longer term and then just make more payments to beat the interest. How do you feel about that?
well, I feel good about that because, and it's not necessarily because of the interest, but there's a comfort level that you have to have. And if someone tells you, your car payment is $400, you may think we never know what's going to happen. You could get sick, your hours could get reduced, you lose your job. So if you're uncomfortable with $400, but you know that you could pay it, but you're just uncomfortable committing to that amount, because once you sign your name on the dotted line, you have committed to that. So I can understand, and I have done so myself, is to commit to a longer term and just pay it off shorter. Because that way, if
Okay.
something happened and I don't have the money, then that's okay. I'm not obligated, and I'm not getting any hits on my credit because I didn't make the payment. So yes, you may pay a little extra in interest, but it's so worth it. I mean, if in my opinion, it's worth it for your peace of mind. Does
Okay.
that answer your
Thank
question?
you.
Yeah. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's worth it for your peace of mind. And like I said, you want to watch your credit score, your credit rating, because that's going to determine what your interest is, and then your interest determines what your payment is. And if you get a 0% down, if you don't pay any money down, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but you also have to consider that the least amount you pay down, the more your payment is going to be, and the longer your term is going to be. So that could be, if you have not thoroughly done your research and were sure that the car, the sales price is the value of the car or less. Ideally, you want to get it for well under retail. Um, but if you haven't paid anything down, yeah, that might be an issue. I bought a car. Oh yeah, that's what I was in the middle of telling you before we got disconnected. Several years ago, I bought a car and I paid 6,500 OTD, which is out the door. That included taxes and their administrative fees and everything. So it's $6,500, and I drove the car for 5 years. I put 60,000 miles on it. And when the car was totaled, they still gave me $4,000. So it pays to do your homework. And it also paid because, as I said, yes, most reputable dealers will look at the book value. They will look at KBB, Kelly Blue Book value, or they'll look at Edmunds value. But you do have some that will not. And that car, I don't recall what it was listed for. I think it was listed for like 7,000, if my memory serves me right. And that was 7,000 plus. It should have been 7,000 plus the administration fees that they charge and all of that. But I got it for 6,500 without anything else. But I saw it, cars with the same model listed for $10,000. So had I not been diligent in my research, I would have thought 10,000 was, around the norm, but it wasn't. So yes, that's what you want to do. Now, if you're already underwater, uh, your options, well, you have a few options, but there's no magic solution. There's no magic fix. Um, so I can't paint you, the rosy picture, but I can give you what your options are, and realistically what you could and perhaps should do. So you need to determine how much you're underwater. You can go to kbb.com or Edmunds, EDMUNDS.com, and it will allow you to put your car in there with all of the features, and you want to be sure that you list all of the features, because if you have a navigation system or alloy wheels or sunroof and you fail to put it in there, then you're going to get a lower value. And you never want um, to try to get the value without adding in all the details. But it will tell you what the value of your car is. So once you learn what the value is, you're going to subtract how much you owe. And so that's going to tell you if you have any equity. Now, if you owe more than the value, the amount that you owe over the value is your negative equity. So the amount that you owe that's over that value. So if the value of the car is 8,000 and you owe 10,000, then you have 2,000 negative equity. So the best option would be, it's not the favorable option, but the option that generally will be best for you in the long run is to actually keep the car. Now, at least keep the car to the point that the value and how much you owe are equal. So in the example that I used, you want to at least keep the car until you owe 8,000. So you want to pay off the 2,000 and then you keep it to get the 8,000. And that way, you won't have to suffer all of that negative equity and rolling into another car. Because remember now, when you rolling it into another car, that interest is going on there too. It's just not going to be a flat. In this example, 2,000. So I would suggest that you keep it, and then what you can do is divide that amount by how many months you have left on your car payment. So if you owe $2,000, where's my handy dandy calculator? So we'll say you owe $2,000. You're $2,000 in negative equity, and you have 36 months, another 3 years to pay it. So that's $56 a month. It would behoove you to pay an extra $56 a month. That way, you should get it paid off faster, and at the end of your term, you won't be owing any extra. You could refinance, and if you refinance, you want to refinance. Try the credit unions. I tend to favor credit unions because they usually have good rates. So try to go to your local bank and whoever you're banking with, because you have a relationship with them. And if you've been paying your bills on time, even if your car is you're underwater, you may be able to pay that difference, and then they'll allow you to refinance it for a lower interest rate. And when you do that, although you may have to make up that difference that you owe, so in this example, you make up that $2,000, your interest rate is going to be less, so you'll still pay the car off faster. So you may want to refinance. You can try to sell the car yourself. Now, if you're going to sell the car yourself, the amount you will get more than you get if you took it to the dealer. But if you are selling it yourself, then the amount of money that you get is still not going to be enough to pay it off. So you'll have to add some to pay it off. But before you do that, you want to be sure that your lender is going to qualify you to get another car. So you don't want to get rid of your car and then find out, oops, they're not even going to loan me anything. So you want to go to them, tell them what your plan is, and be sure that they're okay with it. So it's kind of like you're getting pre-approved. You can trade the car in. That should be your last result, because if you trade it, like I said, it's not going to be good for you. You're going to end up with all of that negative equity added on to your other car. So it'll be a vicious cycle. So you would not want to do that. Um, and cars that have a lot of incentives, like you'll see a car and they're offering a lot of money back, they're usually cars that lose their value. So again, check to see cars that hold their value. You might not see a lot of rebates on those cars, but that's because they hold their value. So to rehash, you need to determine how much underwater you are, and you can go to edmunds.com or kbb.com. And then once you determine the amount, then you subtract your loan balance from that amount. So if you come out with a negative, then I would suggest that you divide that negative by the amount of months that you have and just pay extra per month. You could refinance with a credit union, but then they may ask you to pay the difference. But if you get a lower interest rate, it may be worth it. Probably would be worth it if you get a lower interest rate because you'll be saving. You could sell it yourself. And if you sell it yourself, be sure that once you sell it, you can get another car. And the very last resort is to trade the car. So there are some options. There are some things that you can do, but the most important step that you can take is make sure you've done your research before you buy the car. You're actually earning the money. Yes, you don't see it, you don't get it in your hand, but on paper, you earn your money when you buy the car, not when you sell it, if that makes any sense.
Yes, definitely makes some sense. So, are you ready to answer some questions now?
I'm ready to answer some questions.
Okay, let's see. Okay, the people have been posting questions, so feel free to keep going, guys. Um, where should we start? One moment. So, just to begin, can you just explain again what equity is?
Equity is how much you, wait a minute. Look, equity is how
It's the
much,
difference between what you owe and the value, right?
right? Because if you have negative equity, that means you owe more than the value. But if you have positive equity, that means the value is more than what you owe. So that difference is your equity. So if you owe 8,000 and the value is 10,000, you have $2,000 equity. But the
Right.
reverse is true. If you owe 10,000 and it's valued at 8,000, you have a negative 2,000 equity.
Okay.
Yes.
So Keisha has a question. She says she's car shopping now. She's been pre-approved for a loan. At what point in the negotiation should she mention that she has a trade-in?
After she has already determined um, that she's been pre-qualified, correct?
She has a pre-approval already.
She's been pre-approved. Um, after they've talked about what the price of that car is going to be. After she's negotiated with them, and actually before she goes to the dealership, she should do her research and determine how much that car is worth so that when she goes in, she'll have a figure to give them. And don't be afraid to walk away. They'll usually call you back. But yes, but yes, once you go in there and you determine, okay, I've done my research and this car for this year with this amount of miles, and believe it or not, they even look at the color. The color of the car is a factor in the value of the car. So you've added all that information, and when you go to Edmunds or KBB, they will prompt you to add this information, and then you'll know the value what the value is of the car that you're buying. And then once you get them to say, okay, it's 15,000, then you can mention that you
Oh,
have.
by the way.
Right. Then you can mention that you have it. But if you do it before, honey, they'll mingle it so much you won't know the difference between what you're giving them and what they're giving you.
Definitely. So, okay, this is a common question a few people have asked. How do you feel about purchasing like gap insurance, the additional repair and disability insurance? You know, the extras they try to sell you.
Yeah.
Does it is it determined by how old the car is, or you should always stay away from it?
No.
What do you
Now, gap insurance is for all those reasons that I mentioned. If you intend on driving the car for more than 15,000 miles, if in fact, they will mention it to you. If you're buying a car that they anticipate that will be negative equity, then they will mention the gap insurance to you. If you have a high interest rate, then they will mention gap insurance to you. So
Mhm.
gap insurance does have its benefits, but generally speaking, you need gap insurance when you're paying too much for the car.
Okay, okay.
Generally speaking, that's when you're paying gap insurance, and you need to speak with your insurance agent to be sure, because sometimes some of the insurance companies will require that you have a certain amount, or they
Okay.
put conditions on the other insurances, like the liability, collision, and the comprehensive. So
Mhm.
you want to know what the conditions are if you're going to get gap insurance.
What
Now,
about the extended warranties?
I hate to say don't get an extended warranty, but if you can be disciplined enough to pay that, save that money yourself, if you get a warranty
Okay.
and you're disciplined enough to pay that warranty yourself, you can save that money. And if you need to, you can use it.
So you
Now,
mean save what you would be paying a month
save what
yourself?
you could actually save what you would be paying a month yourself. I'm not saying do not get it, but if you're disciplined enough to save that money, and you should always want to have an emergency fund anyway. So if you're disciplined enough to save the money yourself, you can save it, put it in an account, and then you can use it, because that typically doesn't last throughout the life of the car. The extended warranty is usually not the entire life of the car. It'll have a limit, a cap on it of how many years. So
Yes.
if you can save it, I'll just say, for example, and I don't know for certain, whether it is 5 years, but we'll just say, if you could, if it's 5 years and you save that amount for 5 years, once it's over, then you'll still have that money. And if you keep the car year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you'll still have that money.
You
So
know, my insurance agent actually told me that. She was like, honestly, if you could save it yourself, because if you don't use it, you still have your money.
if you
But
don't,
if you,
you still have
so
your money. Exactly.
that's very good advice. So, this person's called a little something extra creations. She gave you
Yeah.
a little scenario, so feel free if you can answer. If not, it's okay. She
Okay.
said she purchased a car in 2015, but it was totaled this past Tuesday. She put
Oh,
down a large, I know, she put down a large down payment so the insurance will pay off the loan. So now she's asking, well, you kind of already answered this. If for her new car, should she get gap insurance? So I guess, yeah.
uh, if she does her research on her, well, and it's also going to depend on the new car that she buys and how much she's going to get for this car. I mean, she very well could get enough that she didn't have a loan on the other car.
I guess the insurance paid it off because she put down a large down payment. So I guess she probably did have it, but they paid it off. So I guess she doesn't owe
Oh,
anything.
okay, okay. Well,
Oh,
again, gap insurance is for when you are getting a car and you expect to pay for it over 60 months. If you expect to lose equity on the car, so you want to be sure that you get a car that's going to hold its value. And I won't say that you don't need any gap insurance because, but if you can save some money, I mean,
Right.
something should happen that you're able to pay for it because that's usually what they say. If well, what if something happens? Are you able to pay for it?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Now, in my experience, I always get a pre-approval through my credit union first, which on top of everything is just such a better experience because you go to the car dealership and I told them I have cash. So
yeah, yeah.
so it's such a I will never retire to finance through the dealership again.
Never.
But I've always wondered, I mean, in my scenario, it's made sense to get the credit union, but is the credit union typically always a better offer than when the dealer,
I've not seen where the
in your
credit
experience?
union was worse than the dealer. Um,
Yeah.
I've seen one where the credit union wasn't that great, but I've not seen where the credit union was as like the dealer. Now, maybe if you're going to the dealer and they're offering, you're buying a new car, that may make
Okay.
because sometimes they'll offer the 1% if you're buying a new car. But generally speaking, yeah, the credit union is the best way to go. You roll up in there and then you roll out with your check.
I loved it. I loved it. They were like, "You have cash in your purse?" I said, "Yep."
Yeah.
They
So
got nervous. They were like, "We got to sell you this card today." I'm like, "Okay."
yeah, I do. I prefer going to the credit union, especially one that you have had a relationship with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Matilda wants to know, how do you feel about leases? Like leasing a car versus
There,
financing.
there are pros and cons with leases. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the pro is you get to change cars, pretty much every 3 years. You don't have the maintenance that you would have or the repairs that you would have on your own car. Um, the cons are you're in a continuous cycle of making payments because
Right.
it's never going to be your car. And from my experience, most people, um, the car is what keeps them from doing other things. That car payment. If they're trying to buy a house, that car payment will kill it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
if you're leasing, you got a continuous car payment. And then
Yes.
in addition to that, you're going to be in a contract. So you just can't walk away and say, "Oh, I don't think I want this car anymore." You have to be you're obligated to remain in that contract, and there are mileage restrictions, and there are wear and tear restrictions. So you can have wear and tear on your own car, and it's just nice not having a car payment.
Yes, it is.
Your own car start looking really good when you don't have to pay for it anymore.
So I guess that was a personal question is, do you determine how long you keep the car depending on where you are? Like if you're like, okay, right now I'm above water. When I get to this point, I'm kind of tiptoeing. Or do you just you just try to keep it as long as you can? We're
Me
all here trying to be
personally,
financially living our best life. So,
I personally keep it as long as I can. I really
okay.
do. In fact, one time I had a car. I really did like that car, and I had it for so long, and it was a good car. But I was just kind of ready for another one. And I talked myself into, I can't believe I did it, but I don't regret it at all. I talked myself into getting the car detailed. I took it to the
Okay.
detail shop. They detail for um, car dealerships. So it was more than $40. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 200, $225. But honey, when
Mm.
I got up out of there, I kept I kept that car for about another 3 or 4 years. And
Oh,
anytime
wow.
anytime I would think about it, I would say, you need to go down there and let them detail it. Because
And get excited again about your
and get
car.
excited again. Because my logic was that 1,250 was less than one new car payment. So
Okay.
and I really don't have a problem with um like my car now, it's a 2007. and I'll make sure I keep it clean because
Yes.
raggedy and old are two different things. So I don't want it to be raggedy, but I don't particularly care that it's old because it's paid for. It's mine.
Yes. I agree. So just okay. The questions are rolling in, so let's just try to answer. Someone Trina wants to know, I think this is a question for her bank, but she's paying monthly. Can she change her payments to bi-weekly?
Usually, the banks talk to the bank to see if they'll let.
Yeah.
That's really what you
Where
do.
can you go to look what a good rate is for car insurance? Where is your go-to compare rates?
You need to call around.
Call around. Okay.
You need to call
How
around.
how do you feel about buying a car from an auction? Like a car auction?
I'm trying to think. Did I
Like
buy that Acura that I bought?
the
I didn't
sixty
buy
five
it
hundred
from.
dollar one?
Oh no, that was from a dealer. That was from a dealer too, but
Okay.
it didn't come with a warranty. But look, I can tell you a story about that. No, it didn't come with the warranty, and 2 days after I was driving it, it went out, and I called the man crying like a baby. I
Oh,
was boo-hooing. He was so nice. He told me pick my mechanic, and he sent me to them. So
nice.
I guess I was just blessed. But now the car that I got that I said that I had details, it they got it from an auction. I didn't go to an auction, but
Right.
they
All
did.
dealers usually get their
Right,
cars from auctions.
right. But the difference was usually the dealer gets the car from the auction and then they kind of check it out and then they
Hmm.
sell it to you. So then there's kind of a barrier there. But when I got that car, there was not a barrier because he went straight to the auction and brought it to me. Um, I'm okay with going to the auction if someone knows what they're looking for because when those cars roll off of that it's not a conveyor belt, but when they drive down, oh, they look really good. I've been to an auction. They look really well, but unless you're a mechanic, you don't know. So you need to definitely
Yeah.
go take a mechanic, and you need to do your research because if you're paying significantly less than what the car is, then do the worst case scenario. And for the most part, the worst, and you want to also be sure that it's not a salvage car. Salvage car
Oh,
might be the worst case scenario. So you want to get either a Carfax or auto. Can't think what the auto word is, but auto something, auto, I don't remember. But at any rate, you want to get
like the history.
the history of it because you wouldn't want to get a salvage vehicle because you don't know how it was repaired. They're beautiful, but you don't know if it's repaired. So, but if you're looking at it, kind of the worst case scenario other than a salvage vehicle is if it has transmission trouble. So if you're getting it for a really, really low price, then you just add the transmission cost into it. And then you can kind of say, well, that's kind of okay because I still got a good deal. And with the car that I mentioned that I where it conked out 2 days after, I was crying like a baby, but I knew that even if he had said, I'm not paying for it, yeah, I got a good deal. So I really won't be too upset. I mean, it was more upsetting that, the car conked out and I had to pull over than it was that I had to get it repaired because I knew that I had gotten a good deal. I mean,
Right.
I got the car for under the retail, and I thoroughly looked over the Carfax, and I took someone with me, and they looked at it, and then we went to oh, that's another thing. You want to go somewhere and have somebody check your car out. A lot of times they don't even charge you. They can put it on if they put it on diagnostic machine. Sometimes they'll charge, but a lot of times they don't. And if they do, it's usually a nominal amount.
Okay.
$35.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see. Jamira has a question. She said, "Please, I believe I'm paying too much for a '07 Highlander with my mom. She's the primary. I don't want to damage her credit. What can I do to receive a lower payment?"
Both of you are on the loan. So in that case, either you could buy it from her and then she pay it off, or both of you could, if you still want to remain on the loan together, then you'd have to get have it refinanced.
Right. Okay.
Throw a lot,
So
and if you can't get it refinanced, just to put as much extra on it that you can. Just get it prepaid. The faster you pay it off, the more money that you'll save, because that interest does add up.
and Nick B said the auto word you were looking for is auto trade. Thank you, Nick.
Auto trader, yeah, that's it, but there's the one I'm looking for is not. I use auto trader to look up the information, but the one that I'm looking for to look at the car is auto something else. Can't remember what it
Oh,
is.
okay.
Auto check. That's what it is. I'm looking at it. Carfax and Auto Check, they give you the history. And Auto Trader, that's where you go to if you want to buy a car or look for a car. Buy a car, sell a car is Auto Trader. Auto Check is the history.
So, Rosalind, we're almost to the end. So, how about you tell us a little bit about the special freebie that you have for the Dream Builders?
Oh, I do have a freebie for you. If you
Yeah.
go to bit.ly, and that's B as in boy, ITLY.com / what did I say it was?
I'm gonna post it in the group and
Post it in the group because I forgot what did I say? Oh, free car buying. bit.ly.com / free car buying. There's a 6-page document there that tells you what you need to look for when you're buying a car.
ooh, yes. And will you be joining us in the Facebook group for a few minutes afterwards?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so if you have any more questions, Rosalind will be there to answer them. And when I saw this topic, I was like, oh my goodness, I need this. I just bought a car, the car that I wanted for so long, a Audi Q5. I try to be good and buy it used, but now I'm like, this car payment. But so I'm gonna do the math and make sure I'm good and try
Yes.
to keep it till the wheels fall off. But this is such a good conversation because it's, you never know. I feel like now you gave us a strategy to do the research, come up with a plan instead of just going to a dealership and like, oh, that's cute.
Oh, they'll be so glad when you fall up in there. Look, all excited.
Yeah, it's
I
like they
did that on
pounce
my
on
first car, and I learned.
you. Yeah. So
Yep.
thank you, Rosalind, for joining us tonight. Dream Builders, please make sure to meet us in the Facebook group and write down your aha moment, what you learned, and tag Rosalind. I'll be posting real soon all the tips and resources that she mentioned today. So have a good night, and I'll see you in the Facebook group in a few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, Rosalind.
Certainly, and thank you.
Thank you.